How's it going, everyone? Mega Man here with my hero guide on the Aramusha. I'm going to be going over the damage values and the speeds of all of his moves, and I'm also going to show off all of his different punishes and any types of guaranteed damage he can get. And as with my other videos, I'm going to have a link to a spreadsheet in the description that has the damage values and speeds of every move in the game. Aramusha's basic light attacks do 15 damage from all sides and are 500 milliseconds. His chained side light does 20 damage, and his chained top light does 15 damage and is 400 milliseconds. His basic heavy attacks do 25 damage from all sides and are 700 milliseconds. His chained side heavies do 35 damage, and his chained top heavy does 30 damage and is 600 milliseconds. His chain finisher side heavies do 45 damage and are 800 milliseconds, and his chain finisher top heavy does 40 damage and is 700 milliseconds. His 4 dodge side heavies do 20 damage and are 700 milliseconds, and his 4 dodge top heavy does 25 damage, is uninterruptible, and is 600 milliseconds. His 4 dodge attacks are unique because you don't actually have to can also be cancelled before the second attack. His sprint attack does 25 damage and is 700 milliseconds, and also if you miss the first attack, you can follow up with another attack that also does 25 damage. The most important part of Aramusha's moveset is his infinite attack chain. He can attack with any combination of light or heavy attacks as long as he is switching between side attacks or top attacks, and while he's doing this, he consumes very little stamina. After doing an attack from any side, you can follow that up with a heavy attack from the same side to turn it into a chain finisher. Now, the chain finishers not only do additional damage, but you can also soft feint them into a light attack from either of the other two sides to continue your infinite chain. There is a quirk about his side heavies that is not mentioned in his move list, and that's if you connect a side heavy, you're always guaranteed a top light afterwards. Now, some of you may be doing this without even realizing it, but just know that it is guaranteed. So the side heavy does 25 damage and the top light does 15 for a total of 40 damage. This is also true for his forward dodge side heavy attacks. The only difference is that these dodge attacks do 20 damage instead of 25. Now, the reason I think the light attack is guaranteed is because Aramusha is the first character to have a 400 millisecond light attack that he can chain into, so by staggering them with the heavy attack, the light attack is guaranteed afterwards. Whether this is intentional or not, it's still pretty cool. The next important part of Aramusha's move list is the Blade Blockade. This is basically an alternative to parrying. After blocking any attack with this move, Aramusha can follow up with 4 different attacks, the first of which is a kick, which drains a decent amount of stamina while also stunning the opponent. Now, normally you don't get any damage off of this kick, but it can wall splat an opponent, allowing you to get a heavy attack. In most situations, you can actually get a guaranteed zone attack after the kick. The only time you can't get the zone attack is if your opponent has a permanent guard and you block an attack to your right side. It's one of those situations where they can only block the attack because they were already blocking on that side. The second move that can be done after a blockade is a light stun. This does about 5 damage, drains a bit of stamina, and also blinds the opponent. The third attack after a successful blockade is a top heavy. This top heavy does 25 damage and is 500 milliseconds. Now this attack is mostly going to be guaranteed. The few times where it's not, your opponent has to have a permanent guard and they have to do an attack that has a quick recovery from the top, so they're already blocking the same side as the heavy attack. And the fourth option after a successful blockade is a side heavy. This side heavy does 45 damage and is uninterruptible and unblockable. It's also 1000 milliseconds. Now I haven't tested if this is guaranteed off of anything, but I would imagine it being a zone attack if it was, since zone attacks are not interrupted by the blockade, so you can use it to punish long recovery zone attacks such as wardens. It's important to know that Aramusha does not get a heavy attack on a Guardbreak. In fact, the heavy attack can not only be blocked, but it can also be parried or deflected. The most damage he can get is if he throws an opponent into a wall and gets a side heavy and a top light. Now the top light would normally do around 15 damage, but because they are wall stunned, they take reduced damage from the light attack. After parrying a heavy attack, you can get a light attack or a zone attack. I personally like doing the zone attack here because it leads to an unblockable mix-up. Unless your opponent is near a wall or out of stamina, there is no reason to guard break them and waste your stamina. After parrying a light attack, you can get a side heavy and a top light for 40 damage. This is the most damage Aramusha can get without the opponent being out of stamina. Aramusha's exhausted throw punish without a wall can be done by whiffing a light attack and following up by a heavy attack and a light attack. The reason you want to whiff the light attack is because your chained attacks do more damage, which will get you up to 50 damage. His exhausted throw punish with a wall is pretty much the same thing as without a wall, except instead of missing the light attack, it's connecting. This will get your damage up to 65. And his exhausted parry punish is very simple but very high damage. So after parrying an exhausted opponent, you have to do a side heavy, then can follow up with a top heavy and a side light. This will total up at 75 damage.